Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm your host, Connor. With me, as always, is my dear friend, Phil.
Hi.
Hello, Phil.
What's up?
Pleasant greetings to you.
And to you.
Thank you. The MMA world is currently in the middle of a bit of a shitstorm, if I say so myself. And we are going to get into it. It stems from last week's card, where there was a very probable case of fight fixing happening at the UFC's very own Apex Center in a fight between Yadier Del Valle and Isaac Dulgarian, formerly highly regarded prospect, I will say, Isaac Dulgarian, also formerly member of James Krause's Glory MMA. So we are going to get into that. I do feel this being a fight-focused podcast by tradition, if we're going to talk about last week's card, we should at least talk about the main event before getting into all of this sort of sideshow bullshit, however interesting it is. So we are going to kick things off talking about Steve Garcia versus David Onama. Steve Garcia continuing his tear through the featherweight division. Next week we have a main event on a half decent, I would say, looking fight night card. The main event is Gabriel Bonfim versus Randy Brown. I would say the other most interesting fight on that card is bantamweight clash between Ricky Simón and the resurgent Hani Barcelos. But there are some other interesting ones on there as well, so hopefully we will have more to talk to you about next week. But let's first talk about Steve Garcia. He is, on the one hand, perhaps the last torchbearer of the Dricus era, because he's an unlikely contender, to say the least.
Yep.
A lot of his fights have looked like complete awkward shit shows, horrible, messy brawls with very little technique. You know, Garcia squeezing his eyes shut as he plants one on his opponent's chin, getting into ridiculous exchanges. He had that fight with, I was about to refer to him as my boy, and now I'm forgetting his name. He had that fight with Kyle Nelson.
Hey,
Kyle Nelson.
Oh, yeah.
No, Calvin Cater's, he's not my boy. You're thinking of Sriram. Shout out to Sriram, who has an undying and eternal love for Calvin Cater for reasons I can't quite understand. But he had that fight with Kyle Nelson where he was like, Garcia was immediately taken down and stuck in a bad position, and then he had to like scramble out and land some like incidental shots on the ground. Like, up until very recently, the Steve Garcia run has felt quite inexplicable to me. A bit like, you know what? Not the final torchbearer, because he's a bit like Ayman Zahabi in that respect. Where it takes me a long time to come to terms with the idea that this man is like is the coming thing in his division. I gotta say, though, the Calvin Kattar fight, it's a very shot Calvin Kattar, but still, that was the only one of Garcia's now 8 UFC fights in which he did not score a pretty quick KO, and I thought he looked quite good having to go 3 rounds with Calvin Kattar. He looked perfectly in control, technical, calm, no bad signs for his first full distance fight. Last weekend, he took on David Onama. He did get a quick KO. However, I thought he looked quite good en route to that finish. So I'm kind of, as with Ayman Zahabi, I'm kind of seeing what actually, beyond just the obvious power, what makes Steve Garcia potentially a real contender.
I mean, I've still got some suspicions about whether we're actually seeing the birth of a real contender here.
Yeah, how can you not? I mean, it's just has for so long has not looked like it's just looked like a bunch of flukes.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. And that's the thing. It doesn't look like flukes, but I think we're also seeing like a series of broadly lateral moves in competition.
Yeah, no doubt.
And we're talking about and the last person to do this kind of thing was, I guess, like Paddy Pimblett, who they deliberately and cynically matched up with the all the sort of oldest and most shot people that they could, and has basically hasn't fought since then.
And look what it did for Paddy Pimblett. Now I'm constantly seeing him on YouTube advertising like men's health products to me. I'm not exactly sure what he's selling, but it's something to do with men.
Yeah. I do think that like he's improved a lot. I mean, Paddy Pimblett has improved.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Garcia has, I think, really learned to like build up a points lead. Like he's like just quite an assertive fighter who's typically he's giving people things to think about before he throws.
Yeah.
Like and yeah, against both Onama and Keita, who are both, relatively for their own reasons, extremely passive. It's obviously very difficult to do that against him.
Yep.
He's jabbing a lot as a southpaw. He's feinting. He's using throwaway shots.
Not just jabbing, but double jabbing, triple jabbing, using the jab to the body, not just setting up other shots with it, but using it to get his feet in the right position to land those shots. Like, the man has an educated southpaw jab.
Yeah. And yeah, this managed to make him like genuinely threatening against a David Onama who, I mean,
yeah,
this felt like a bit of a death knell for whether David Onama will ever be good.
Yeah.
Because apart from anything else, this was a performance that really indicates that he has no. He's one of those fighters who will always take the fights that's given to him.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of knew that already, but this was. I kind of agree. Somehow felt like the definitive indication that is just who he is. Destined or doomed to be.
Yep. So, he was able to pressure Chikadze because Chikadze backed up. And when Onama came forward, when Garcia came forward, Onama immediately went backwards. It was, and it's quite a damning thing to do unless you have even if you do have an elite skill set, it's a bad thing to do, to just allow your opponent to dictate the directionality of the fight. So he was, Onama was just backing up the entire time. He also looked like he'd never fought a southpaw before.
Yep.
Like he'd never fought another southpaw, and he had no idea what was going on in close stance.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say how far this goes, although listeners will know my general attitude towards the average MMA coach, particularly as it regards striking. That is the only thing I know anything about. But I gotta suspect there's a problem with coaching. That, like David Onama, is very likely one of a great many fighters who would benefit from a coach or team of coaches who know what the fuck they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm basing this on one thing I overheard from his corner in this fight, where Garcia was pressuring excellently, just never letting up the pressure, which was still, I know it ended in 3.5 minutes, but it was a pretty patient pressuring performance all the same. It's not like he was just running at him trying to swarm him. He was just building and building and building the initiative the entire fight. And a couple times that Onama got a good lick in, he immediately would press forward and answer with like 3 or 4 punches, even if they didn't all land clean. It was clear. Garcia understands the flow of the fight. He understands what it means to have the tempo on the opponent and knows how to keep it and get it back when they threaten to take it away. But Garcia stepped in with like a 1-2, and his coaches, I suppose, thinking that this was a brilliant observation, were like pointing out that, or maybe I'm conflating their advice with what Daniel Cormier said, because they were like, you see that step every time, and Daniel Cormier was like, they've noticed that Garcia takes a step off to his right whenever he's going to throw the left hand, which is always the case with every single fighter. In order to land your backhand, you pretty much have to take a step off to open up your stance. So I don't, maybe I'm dragging them down with DC here. I thought it was funny that he was like, oh, look at this interesting observation. They've noticed that he has to square his shoulders to line up his backhand. But their advice to David Onama on seeing this step and trying to use it as a trigger was check hook every time.
Oh, God.
Check hook every time he's lining up for the backhand. David Onama strikes like he's lost his glasses in a dark room. Like, how the fuck are you telling this guy who's clearly struggling with this pressure to try to land a check hook in the first round of a fight against a very aggressive opponent who has already proven to be very accurate as well?
Yeah.
Terrible strategic advice. What he should have been doing was smashing Steve Garcia with that jab, which he landed once with great effect, and otherwise was just constantly being pushed around, pushed out of his stance, and not able to set his feet and get comfortable in any way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know it's not much to go on, but like a check hook is like that's an elite move.
That's when you're deep in the fight and you are good at striking.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that's an expert move to get the timing right on that. Like, who's the guy we most know for pulling off that move in boxing? Floyd Mayweather. Not an average boxer. I'm not saying it's not possible for other people to find it, but like, what are these? It just made me think, like, what are these coaches teaching? A guy in David Onama's position who is clearly like uncomfortable with the basic feel of a striking exchange at distance should not be even thinking of check hook counters. No.
Yeah, and that was the other part of this, because obviously, we didn't talk about this fight, but surely they cannot have thought that Onama was going to win a kickboxing fight with Garcia, right? Like, because I just thought this was going to be a scrappy, violent fight. But if you told me that, like, Onama is going to have no inclination or attempt to take it to the ground, like even just like trying to get into the clinch, I would be like, oh yeah, Steve Garcia is going to smoke him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Especially having seen what happened the last time Garcia faced somebody who wanted to take him down. Kyle Nelson got him down immediately. One of his other UFC losses to Luis Pena, who just backpacked him for the entirety of their fight.
Yeah, which again, like, makes it a little harder to figure out, where Garcia goes. But I mean, that is the thing, though. Like, Zahabi, this isn't just like insane jank. It's a genuinely functional style that capitalizes on like that just capitalizes on a lot of the flaws that the MMA fighters have.
Totally.
You know,
it's hard to look at this fight and not just say, like, Steve Garcia looked like a genuinely good boxer.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the other weird thing, right, is that he's a Jackson Wink guy.
I know.
He does look anything like a Jackson Wink fighter. Who is?
Isn't that baffling? I know.
I mean, maybe. I'm assuming that, like, maybe just Winklejohn just doesn't do any of the training there. It just doesn't do any of the striking training there anymore.
I mean,
maybe it's just
my understanding.
It's just been an entirely positive outcome.
My understanding was that Greg Jackson doesn't do any training there anymore, and that Winklejohn had essentially taken over running the gym.
Mm-hmm.
They were both in Garcia's corner. You know, they'll show up, I suppose, when they know they've got somebody who's finding consistent success. But I had the exact same thought. I totally forgot. Even knowing Garcia was from Albuquerque, I should have known, but I did not connect the dots and realize he was a Jackson Wink guy until I saw them behind him after the fight. And I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense.
I mean, at this point, he's the Jackson Wink guy.
It's true. It's otherwise like a defunct gym. Maybe they've brought in some like good boxing coaches or something. Who knows? But whoever you attribute Garcia's game to, I'm telling you, he is genuinely a good boxer for MMA.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at least offensively. And even saying that, like, he also found some nice slip counters and stuff. Like, he looks like somebody who, like, you put him in some 16-ounce gloves and he will do very well sparring in a boxing gym.
Yep.
Does a great job using his feint and his lead hand to score, to do damage, to keep the pressure on, but also to cover the distance and get his feet in position to land the follow-up shots. And he's got a great eye for when his opponent is responding to his initiative. There were several instances in this fight where he would press in and Onama would shell up and Garcia would take half a beat and then rip his body and finish the combination upstairs. Like, he looks like a very natural, fluid combination puncher who really understands how to build an attack and to keep an initiative flowing and transforming as the fight goes on. Strong stuff.
Yeah. And he's obviously just got like great natural weight transfer, which again is not a Jackson Wink thing.
No.
He has
crushing power. There's no question about that.
Yeah. Like David Onama has taken hellacious beatings.
Yep.
Over the course of his career. Has he ever been finished? I mean, like that? No, I don't think so.
I don't think he has.
He's never been.
He's been hurt.
But yeah, the Gabriel Benitez fight, the Nate Landwehr fight, like just shellackings.
His fight with Mason Jones, which he also lost, but largely because he got exhausted and got out wrestled. Like, he's been hurt plenty, but he has incredible conditioning and recoverability. And Garcia just didn't let him off the hook. And again, did not even go crazy in those moments pressing the attack. He dropped Onama super hard and then started to pursue him, and Onama tried to like get the fuck off of me jab, and Garcia slipped it and came back with a counter. Like, he was ready. He was in good position pressing that very strong advantage. So yeah, I mean, all that remains to be seen is let's put Steve Garcia in there with somebody who not only can but will try to wrestle.
Yeah,
because that looks like a potentially fatal weakness of his. If he's just allowed to strike people, then I really think he can handle himself against some of the best dudes in this division.
Brian Ortega's still ranked in the top 10.
Steve called out Max Holloway. I mean, that's probably not going to happen, but
he's not a featherweight anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember who's booked and who isn't, but yeah, above him, it's basically all really good, really tough fights. It's, I think, Yusuf Zalal, Arnold Allen, Aljamain Sterling, Lerone Murphy, Yair Rodriguez, Diego Lopez, and Movsar Evloev.
Mm-hmm.
It's either that or they give him like a bounce-back Jean Silva.
Mm-hmm.
Or Patricio Pitbull or whatever.
Plenty of great wrestlers in that collection, too.
Yep.
That's the thing. That is the last thing that has me still doubting the truth of the Steve Garcia run. I just think he's not good at that part of the game.
But yeah, it's hard to disagree at this point. I mean, it's not even just that. It's that, like, he's just been mostly fighting people who are going to box with him. He's not even like, he hasn't even fought like a determined, like, low kicker or anything. Like, there's many people who have had, extremely dangerous boxing games in MMA who have just been dismantled by people who can kick. He was going to fight Barboza, I believe, but then that got cancelled. I think Barboza was injured, and probably a good thing. I think he probably would have knocked out Barboza and it would have been sad.
Yeah. So yeah, there are still some unexplored avenues, but as far as fights go that are, like, in many ways reminiscent of all his other wins, I found this to be pretty convincing. On the boxing front, I believe that Steve Garcia is the real deal. If this were boxing, I would not have many doubts left, but it ain't.
Yeah, I think it is tempered by how dreadful Keita and Onama both looked for varying reasons. But yeah, I mean, I'm genuinely actually enjoying Steve Garcia. Like, I was just like, he's just a big power monster who's knocking people out, but he's really trying. I am, and he's got something.
He's a craftsman. There's no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's take a break there, and when we come back, we can get into the rest of this card, which will, of course, probably immediately get us into a discussion of the aforementioned shit show between Yadier Del Valle and Isaac Dulgarian, and the fight-fixing scandal that has arisen from that fight. We'll talk about that after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
All right, welcome back. Let's continue talking about this Garcia Onama card, which did not look all that interesting on paper. I suppose at the end of this, maybe we could mention that Waldo Cortez Acosta and Ante Delia also had a very strange fight. But the big story coming out of this card is, as I said, the fight between Yadier Del Valle and Isaac Dulgarian, in which Dulgarian, who looked like a really great prospect, super athletic, excellent wrestler. I believe he was a decorated wrestler in college. And of course, previously in a very, very tough and, despite everything, close fight, he was squished by the anti-wrestler prospect killer that is Christian Rodriguez. But even in that fight, it was like, okay, he's inexperienced. He gassed himself going way too hard, but he kept fighting hard, kept fighting to survive. Even as the fight he was exhausted and had every reason to be demoralized. Even in that prospect loss, I think he showed he had something. And it was probably for that reason that he came into this fight with Del Valle a pretty significant favorite. From the couple of things I've just read, he started around minus 250, which is not outrageous, but is definitely in the realm of heavily favored. Apparently those lines shifted quite rapidly shortly before the fight, and from what I've read, many of those bets were said to have been placed on a Del Valle by first round finish. Now, Del Valle is good. He's a good fighter. He has already gotten some good results in the UFC before this. I think all of them finishes, in fact. No. He had his Contender Series fight. But then he fought Connor Matthews in his UFC debut, who really is so fragile that he should never, ever be an MMA fighter to begin with. All the same, Del Valle handled that gimme win the way you want to see a prospect handle a gimme win. So it's not like there was no universe in which Del Valle could have beaten Dulgarian. But there may have been some shit going down which led to this particular very, very dominant result. Phil, let me know, fill me in on all that you know that I don't.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, I think. Essentially, yeah, the betting lines moved quite heavily, indicating that there were a few like extremely large bets being placed. Mm-hmm. And then I think people on the broadcast, I think it was Chiesa had been sort of analyzing Dulgarian beforehand and saying, he's a really good grappler, was shocked at how poor his grappling was. I think Cormier was also not terribly impressed. But yeah, the essential, and, people have been having fun finding out that, Dulgarian used to train with James Krause, who's obviously been fired from the UFC. And yeah, as far as I'm aware, many of the betting shops have refunded the numbers, the bets.
And the
there are
UFC
rumors
summarily fired Dulgarian.
Yeah.
They immediately terminated his contract. So there's reason enough for them to be cautious here.
He's been fired. There are rumors of the FBI investigating not just this fight but multiple other fights with where line movement has been weird. And
yeah, this obviously is reminiscent of the whole James Krause situation, where Krause was himself a pretty good, not standout, but certainly not bad UFC fighter. Moved into a coaching role at, I think, Glory Fitness and Kickboxing, maybe the official name of the gym, something like that. And he had several decent fighters in his stable. One of those fighters was the live or die by the sword submission maniac Derek Minner, who in 2022 had a fight with Shayalan Nurdan-Beke, in which he was just immediately finished. It quickly came out that he had a known injury. I think he had like a ACL tear or something, debilitating going into the fight. And then that James Krause and I think some of Minner's teammates had placed bets against him before the fight.
Yeah.
And so Minner was immediately fired. James Krause was banned from working with the UFC. I don't know how much you can draw from the fact that Dulgarian himself was once associated with Krause. I mean, a lot of good fighters were. It was a pretty good camp.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard not to think of James Krause when looking at this. And it's also interesting to think about the UFC being implicated. Now, as you say, at the moment, we really only have like rumors to go on. Like, there's no doubt that there are suspicions. There's no doubt that the UFC immediately got rid of Dulgarian. So concrete actions have been taken. As far as I can tell, all of the actual reporting on this and these stuff with like FBI involvement are coming from this guy, Harry Mack. And I don't really know enough about him to say how credible he and his sources might be. He has reported that that the FBI is looking at this, and that forces me to point out that of all the times in history when we could have the FBI investigating the UFC for their potential complicity in fight fixing, if not their like active involvement, seems like the best time for them, if I do say so myself. Kash Patel, the current director of the FBI, has literally been hanging out at pay-per-view events, ringside seats, with Dana White. So I'll just say, if you're looking forward to anything happening there, I would advise you to be cautiously pessimistic. I very much doubt that anything will come of this, that the UFC brass, and in particular Dana, will be found guilty of anything. And that may be a shame, because I don't think this is the only, or the James Krause thing is the only case of the UFC potentially being complicit in this kind of stuff. And the reason I say complicit is that the report is that the UFC were allegedly informed of suspicious action on the Dulgarian betting line before the event. I don't know if that's true. If it is, the fact that they chose to have the fight happen anyway would seem to me like grounds for some kind of criminal prosecution. Yeah. Well, what do you have to say?
So yeah, I mean, a bunch of people have started obviously letting their imaginations run wild with them. Where they're just like, suddenly every weird fight result is open to reinterpretation now. People are looking at, are there crooked refs out there? Maybe there are. But who knows? But I don't think that's what we would be looking at from the UFC. But as in, the idea that like there's a point at which the UFC would be like directly involved in fight fixing is silly, because if it was, it would be it would be incredibly dangerous for them to do so.
Yeah.
And with it being dangerous, they would only do it for like major fights. And, it would make it even harder to cover it up. And if it was done at that kind of scale, and, and we've seen, boy, have we seen, the fact that like all the UFC stars have basically been cleansed from the top of the from their spots atop their divisions. But what we are seeing, I think, is the natural outcomes of a few of the UFC's like successes. Just the sheer amount of money pouring into sports betting, ever since there was that Supreme Court ruling that that switched betting from being federally illegal to federally with state exceptions to being the other way around. There's been steadily more money pouring into sports betting. Meanwhile, the UFC roster is kept at a relatively, are all rather poor.
Yeah.
And it just makes sense that there would be, there would start to be ways in which that differential would start to resolve.
Of course.
The money would find cracks to pour in.
If you're a fighter, I can't say exactly what Dulgarian was getting paid, but given that this was his, second or third UFC booking, he's probably getting like 16, 18K at the high end for a fight. Guy's got to pay for his travel expenses, got to pay his coaches, got to pay his managers, got to pay for his supplements and nutrition and everything else. He's maybe, this is all complete guesswork, but maybe taking home at the end of the day like $10,000 before taxes. And then you're telling a guy in that position, by the way, people are potentially betting thousands or tens of thousands of dollars or more on your fight. And I believe you found just before Dulgarian himself did make a public remark about gambling on fights, saying that he felt, you have to tell me where you sourced that, but where did that come from? That he said he felt that fighters should receive a percentage of the winnings of people who bet on them.
Yeah. It was, I can't remember where the interview was from. But yeah, there are fighters. So I think Lando Venata and Vince Morales came forward and said they were approached to throw fights, and then immediately both walked it back.
Of course, classic.
They were like, "Oh no, I didn't. That was just a joke." At the presumably behest of either their managers or lawyers.
Or the UFC.
Maybe they just were. Maybe it actually was jokes, but they didn't sound like very good or funny jokes.
Well, they're fighters, not comedians, Phil. I mean, they don't have the finer points of the craft down.
So yeah, this definitely sounded like they were told by someone to walk back those claims. But yeah, I think this is a natural outcome of the UFC not paying its fighters very much. The other part is that it's just a natural that we're seeing more of this kind of stuff, at least partially due to the UFC's sort of increasing encompassing of the sport, and that they've been able to build lots of routes to make money and lots of what I guess people would call like vertical integrations with things like the Performance Institute. But all this kind of stuff means that the routes for things like, the routes for things like, who knew what and so on going into fights can become increasingly blurry.
Mm-hmm.
Because while, as in the Pereira Ankalaev 2 or Aljamain Sterling TJ Dillashaw fights, these were cases which were essentially people in the know knew that those fighters were injured and compromised, and that is material information that is not available to the public that could be used to affect betting lines.
Yeah.
And now that the UFC has, ensured that it has quite detailed medical information on its fighters, now it's got the Performance Institute and so on. It's going to become harder for it to disentangle itself in a way that it would be if it had just been like, oh yeah, these people are completely independent of us.
Yeah. I mean, even setting aside the betting side of fight fixing, which is obviously at the core of it most of the time, there is still the sort of idea of unsporting manipulation of results, which could potentially serve the UFC's interests as a business. I find it hard to imagine in the case of that Dillashaw-Sterling fight, which for those who don't remember, TJ Dillashaw had a badly dislocated shoulder, if I recall correctly, which was, as we found out, basically right after the fight finished, well known to everyone involved beforehand. Dillashaw, his team, and as far as I could tell, the UFC also knew. I can't recall exactly, but they may have even mentioned it on the broadcast. Perhaps a slip there, but I seem to recall something like that happened. I find it hard to imagine that the UFC was really invested in the idea of getting Aljamain Sterling a win. Still, very unethical for them to have that fight go on ahead and to have people gambling on it, apparently knowing that one fighter was compromised in such a way that, as we saw in that fight, basically prevented him from actually competing.
Yep.
In the case of Ankalaev Pereira, stories of that came out, that Ankalaev was injured. And also with implications at the very least that the UFC brass were aware of this. That does look like a potential case of manipulating outcomes for a profitable business, a result that is profitable to the business. Because no question, they would rather have Alex Pereira champion than Magomed Ankalaev. He's one of the only stars in the entire promotion and is like a cultural sensation, really, as far as MMA fighters go. And so to me, like, whether or not there's any gambling going on there, and obviously that presents all the same issues as this. That if Ankalaev was injured and people who were betting knew about it, they would all the same have a material advantage in placing bets. But even setting that aside, I still think having Ankalaev fight knowing that he was compromised is at least tantamount to fight fixing.
I don't know if it's fight fixing, but because again, I think they probably would have rather have TJ Dillashaw beat Aljamain Sterling.
Totally.
But I think, especially if we reflect it to the allegations that the FBI contacted the UFC around the Dulgarian fight, I think, the UFC's cardinal sin or virtue, depending on who you're talking to, I think at this point, is the way it clings to the show must go on.
Mm-hmm.
And that is always the most important thing, that there must be a card. And this has only become more important since they've tied themselves into, various, betting relationships they now have. The ESPN deal, there's a tremendous amount of money tied up into this. It's led to the it's probably led to the vast size of the UFC in terms of all the fighters. And then, in order to keep that size of that roster down, it's made them all poor. Mm-hmm. And so, you get problems like this one. But I think, in general, the FBI probably came up to, if this happened, again, we don't really know. The FBI could have come up to them and it said, we're having some concerns about this fight. And they were probably like, fuck off, you pussies. We don't care. I think their priority is above all other things, that they will default to putting the fight on.
Yeah.
Whatever else is happening. Yes, exactly.
It has always been the case, but you're 100% correct. It has only gotten more so. The schedule dominates all. Doesn't matter what else has happened. Doesn't matter how good the fights are, how injured the fighters are. The fight will be happening.
Whether you might be committing a federal crime.
Yep. Nope. Doesn't matter. We scheduled it. The fight has to happen. All the fights have to happen. We got Burger King ads to sell. And, definitely a situation to keep an eye on going forward. I will simply reiterate that if it is true that the UFC is being investigated by the FBI, don't hope for a positive outcome. This is the organization which is currently receiving no small amount of government assistance in their attempts to dismantle the Ali Act, which has every prominent member of the Republican Party and the actual FBI itself present at pay-per-view events, where the president gets a special star walkout. Do not hope for Kash Patel's FBI to actually go after the UFC here. Even though these are suspicious circumstances, everybody knows Dana White is a gambling addict, and could very well be personally involved in this. Still, even if all of that is the case, I would not expect anything positive to come out of this. All we can say is that it's interesting. And what do we like more on this show than learning more about the topics we're already invested in, be it the fighters or the fight promotion, the world of fighting itself. We will learn some things, I feel, in this process, even if we don't get the result we hope for.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree on the whole thing. I think obviously the most likely thing we're gonna the largest scale outcome is likely to be that I would say
some fighters
maybe
and coaches get fired.
10 to 15 probably low-level fighters get summarily booted.
Yeah.
And then Dana gets up there to smugly tell everyone how, we're a sport of integrity, and you can't pull that shit here. It'll be his "you never come back from hitting a woman"
Of course.
speech, but for gambling.
Yeah. You never come back from fixing a fight. How could they have done this? Yeah. It's a mob kind of move, you know. You just throw the low-level soldiers under the bus, and everyone on top walks away clean. Yeah, I agree. That's probably the likeliest outcome. I mean, the fact that they immediately fired Dulgarian, I mean, what does that say? Does it say that they knew? Or that they were simply so cautious of the suspicions surrounding it that they were like, we have to disassociate ourselves immediately. But they've already proven how they will handle this given the opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, either they have proof or there's no proof at all. One way or the other, they immediately got rid of the guy who was suspected of having a part in this. What's going to happen to Del Valle? Was he in on it? Because I got to say, if I was looking at this just as a fight, didn't look like a two-way thrown fight to me. Maybe could have been.
No.
But Del Valle was hammering the shit out of Isaac Dulgarian before he ever started attacking those chokes, which Dulgarian was maybe suspiciously not defending very well. I don't know. But Del Valle, I can't really say what his part might have been in this. All I can say is that it looked like he was out there trying to beat a dude's ass.
Yeah. No, I don't think there's any reason to suspect him at all. But yeah, this just seems like an economic inevitability, given the vast amounts of money and growing amounts of money sloshing around in this sport, and the fact that none of it is actually going to the fighters.
Yep.
And yeah, the fact that it's happening in the prelims and the fights that people aren't necessarily paying that much attention to is exactly where you would expect it to happen.
Totally, yeah. There's much less incentive for a main event fighter to be doing this because they're at least making a couple tens of thousands of dollars on average for their fights. It's down on the prelims.
And then generally and then generally the future value of their UFC or MMA career is generally a lot higher.
Right. Yep. Cannot disagree. All right, well, we'll have to keep an eye on this story as it develops and revisit it in future episodes. For the time being, I think we should take another break and then come back to talk about hopefully a fight that's not fixed between Gabriel Bonfim and Randy Brown after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back. Let's talk about next week's Fight Night main event. This one is happening at the Apex. but it doesn't actually look as bad as most Apex cards. Like, it's actually looking half decent to me.
Yeah, watchable.
Totally watchable. I wouldn't call this like a great Fight Night card, but I would call it a standout Apex card. No question.
Yeah.
In the main event, we've got Gabriel Bonfim versus Randy Brown. An interesting and meaningful welterweight fight. I think that's a perfectly fine Fight Night main event. I don't know why they have Joseph Morales fighting Matt Schnell, whose only win in the last 5 years came against the reanimated corpse of Jimmy Flick. But we've also got Ismael Bonfim is also fighting on this card. He's taking on noted power puncher Chris Padilla. That seems fine. Ricky Simone, who is resurgent, is against the similarly resurgent Jaime Barcelos in a pretty cool looking bantamweight matchup. You know, they've got their guy Christian Leroy Duncan in the main card opener. Hyder Emil is trying to come back from his loss to Jose Delgado against Jamal Emmers. I think that's a pretty well-made fight. Miles Johns, Daniel Marcos. Hopefully a redemption fight for Daniel Marcos after that awful, awful performance he had against, who's the dude who had no idea how to maintain a reach advantage against Davison Figueiredo? Montel Jackson?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's quite a lot of interesting stories happening on this card, to be honest. I'm actually stunned to have just discovered that it is happening at the Apex Center.
Yeah, it's just it's a decently watchable night of well-matched fights between people who deserve to be in the UFC for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from Matt Schnell, who not that he doesn't deserve to be there because he's a lot of fun, but I don't want to see him there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but he is at least an established fighter who's been in plenty of notable fights. Yeah. This is a cop-out way of evaluating a card in some sense, but in another sense, it is absolutely correct to point out that most of the fighters on this card warrant Wikipedia pages.
Yep.
And also, there are even a couple, I think, who don't have Wikipedia pages that should. I mean, if that isn't a mark of quality for an Apex event, I don't know what is.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about the main event. Welterweights Gabriel Bonfim and Randy Brown. Bonfim has been pretty impressive results-wise in the UFC for the last 2 or 3 years, almost 3 years. His only loss coming to Nicholas Dalby, who at the time in 2023 was really streaking and finding what will almost certainly go down as the best form of his entire career. Randy Brown was also getting a lot of good results before a split decision to the overweight Brian Battle, but in his last fight, he got a very impressive KO over the spirited and aforementioned Nicholas Dalby. So again, I would call this an interesting, well-made, and meaningful fight between two fringe welterweight contenders. Certainly not a title eliminator, but whoever wins this fight will probably have a good place in the top 10. And that works for me for a fight night.
Yeah, it's an interesting clash between someone with no real weaknesses, but also no actual standout strengths.
Right.
And one of the most sort of interestingly and sometimes frustratingly flawed but potent fighters in the welterweight division.
Right.
Because Gabriel Bonfim is really difficult to get a beat on. He is he's just good at stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's quite fast, he's quite strong, he's quite big, he can strike, he can throw hands, he can kick, he can wrestle, he can grapple, and none of it is super impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nor are we talking like a well-built sort of Bilal Muhammad type who changes his approach for each opponent.
Right.
He's not that either. It's just like he's going to be there and he's going to, do some MMA, and hopefully the opponent will be worse at MMA than he is. Conversely, Randy Brown is like vulnerable to a large amount of potential counter plans, not least of which are like consistent pressure, low kicks, wrestling.
I mean, Randy Brown is the kind of guy who is vulnerable to no counter game plan too. Like, one of the frustrating things about Randy Brown is that he can be quite brilliant, but has long been prone to mental lapses or sort of strategic aimlessness in a fight. He doesn't always seem to recognize. Like, I think this is why he has been crushed in pressure situations. It's not because he has no defense or no footwork or can't counterpunch or can't, achieve a clinch and do some damage from there. It's because he doesn't recognize how critical the position he's in all the time when his opponent has pushed him into the cage, and will just kind of lackadaisically walk into a fight-ending shot, as he did against Jack Della Maddalena.
Yep. But yeah, regardless, it's still, outrageously potent.
Yep.
As you said, can be quite brilliant in moments. And thus, I've mentioned this before, but it's weird that he's a complete, despite, looking fairly similar as just like the two huge black guys of the division, him and Neil Magny both have like similar counter game plans that worked against them.
True, yeah.
Pressure and low kicks and wrestling and so on, whilst being utterly different fighters.
Right.
With like very few differences.
Yeah.
Because he's wildly potent. Should you try and engage him in what is, I guess, technically his preferred area. Like the Dalby fight was one where we were just like, sure, people have pressured and been aggressive against Randy Brown, and Nicholas Dalby is these days, very aggressive and consistent, and his aggression just got him immediately smoked. Like, he's someone who has a fair amount of variance in their fights, despite being, having very consistent flaws, simply because he is so outrageously dangerous.
Exactly, yeah. Even in bad fights, he has a better chance than many of turning it around immediately and winning.
Yeah, I mean, you said that he got knocked out by Jack Della Maddalena, but he kind of gave the welterweight champion some real trouble before then.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's just the kind of thing that you can't do with Randy Brown. You cannot let him have his fight. And yeah, I mean, so the one thing I found myself thinking, looking at this fight, is that there does seem like there's a big chance that it could suck, because if you could combine the last two fights of these two guys relatively easily, right? You can just say Bonfim had a slow-paced fight against Stephen Thompson where he periodically pushed him up against the cage, and Randy Brown had a slow-paced fight with Brian Battle where Brian Battle pushed him up against the cage a bunch. I don't think it's going to work. I mean, in retrospect, I didn't really feel like it did work. I agree. Really feel like Brian Battle won that fight.
I agree. Not only did Randy Brown land plenty of shots at range, several times when he was driven against the fence by Brian Battle, he threw him on his fucking head and ended up on top of him.
Yeah.
He is an unpredictable opportunist, Randy Brown.
Yeah. And also, like, that was a Bryan Battle that was very determined to push into the clinch at all opportunities.
Definitely. Battle.
And I haven't seen that from Bonfim. He just doesn't have the. If he was going to do it against anyone, like to just like try and spend the entire fight clinching up, he should have done it against Wonderboy, frankly.
Right.
But yeah, he's just like, again, that well-roundedness leads to him just being a sort of strategically directionless fighter.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll say for an optimistic voice, I don't think this will suck. We've got 5 rounds for something interesting to develop. And given that Bonfim has had plenty of fights, like, for example, against Angelosa, where it was just kind of allowed to be, in that case, like a tepid range kickboxing battle for lots of it, I don't think Randy Brown tends to deliver bad fights from that range. Nor do I really see a reason to think that, like, Bonfim is such a great wrestler and cage grinder that Randy Brown is going to be completely neutralized there. Like, this is the thing. He, on the one hand, Stephen Thompson looked like he had found a little bit of his old counter wrestling, which has been notably absent in recent years. He didn't actually allow Bonfim all that much control time in their fight, for having spent a lot of, being put into a lot of clinches and being taken down 5 times. But is part of that like Bonfim is maybe not super great at controlling people in those positions? Does he actually have the technical wherewithal to win a fight? If that is his strategy, like, can he succeed in sucking the air out of the room against Randy Brown completely? I don't know. I think if anything,
yeah, again, as I said, like, if he was going to do it to anyone,
right, exactly,
it would have made sense to just do it to Stephen Thompson.
No, that doesn't mean he's incapable of winning. I mean, at the very least, he's still likely to put Randy Brown in some dangerous spots where we know Randy can be very vulnerable, not just positionally, but can be vulnerable to powerful strikes. And Bonfim, of all the things that don't really stand out about him skill-wise, his physicality does stand out. He's a great athlete. He's big. Having said that, this will be, I think, the first time in the UFC he has faced someone who is larger than him in every measurable dimension, other than maybe like brawl size. I mean, Bonfim is thicker than Randy Brown, but Randy Brown is 2 inches taller and will have a 6-inch reach advantage. So I don't know. I'm kind of feeling Randy Brown here, to be honest. Maybe that's my mistake for just not really being sold on Bonfim, but I watch fights like the one he had with Angelosa, and I just can't help but see like how awkward he really looks dealing with somebody who's just sort of bothering him with volume. And Losa is nobody's idea of like a potent or accurate kickboxer. But he is like poking out these annoying jabs. And there's so many long phases in that fight where Bonfim is just kind of being like stalled out. Like he can't get his feet set. He can't catch his timing. I don't think he has particularly good footwork in a sustained kickboxing battle. And I don't think he can expect to stall Randy Brown out in clinches as he did to Stephen Thompson. I think Randy Brown has proven in the Bryan Battle fight and others that he's actually got some moves from the clinch. He can be dangerous there. He can find whizzers and hit unexpected throws. He can land mean knees to the body. He can fire good elbows and work collar ties. So I don't know. I'm just not really sold on Gabriel Bonfim. I still think, this is the weird thing, their results have differed, but if I look at him and his brother Ismail, who's also on this card, I still think Ismail looks like the better fighter.
Yeah. He's unfortunately just in a He's just in a tougher division.
Right.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I wasn't really sure about this one coming in, but I do think like Randy Brown is just that guy where you just have to fight him the right way. He's just too dangerous otherwise. And I just don't trust Bonfim to be able to do it. Like, maybe I mean, again, like the thing is, like, Brown he's not even like that durable to either, strikes or submissions, meaning that it's, sometimes something bad will simply happen and he'll just get put out of there. But like, Bonfim hasn't been a super dynamic finisher either. I mean, I think the most likely outcome for him finishing is that he backpacks him like Wonderboy did and then taps him. But yeah, I think he's just going to leave Randy hanging around for too long. And you can see I think the battle fight is pretty miserable, but you can see like there's moments where he's given space against Battle and he starts lighting him up.
Yeah.
Like, throwing combinations to the body, then going upstairs. Like, I don't think Bonfim can run a neutralizing game against this version of Randy Brown.
Yeah, I think I agree. Again, you can't really count on Randy Brown.
You never can,
but it's possible. We could mention here this. I just wanted to talk about it because he's one of the recurring characters of the show now, for better or for worse. This probably would have been the main sort of side chatter story surrounding last week's card, if not for the whole Dulgarian fight fixing situation. Waldo Cortez Acosta, he's back, folks. He's back in a big way. He was in the co-main event on a card where one of the most damning things you can say about it is that he was probably the best choice for the co-main event slot. That is really that is damning with faint praise, honestly. That the card was so weak down the lineup that I can't even fault them for putting Cortez Acosta in a co-main event, even after that incredible bed-shitting performance of his against Sergey Pavlovich. But he appeared to get finished by Ante Delia or Delia. I'm not sure. I think he's Dutch. Your guess is as good as mine on how they pronounce words over there. Sounds like a deaf person speaking English sometimes, Dutch. Is that offensive? Sorry. But he got poked in the eye, which I didn't see in the moment. Nobody saw in the moment, including the referee. And then the Dutchman unloaded on him, and he like turtled up and went down. Then it came out that he was poked, and all the referees are in the cage and the doctor's in there. Cortez Acosta is like watching the replay being like, look, he poked me in the eye. Meanwhile, Delia's entire corner are, like, spend that entire time celebrating, thinking they've won. Like, I don't think they had a translator to go and talk to them and explain to them what was happening. Either that or none of the referees even tried with like sign language to try to tell them, hey, don't pour out all of that adrenaline just yet. The fight might continue. And then it did continue, and Cortez Acosta immediately knocked Delia out on a pull counter. Which, I said it last week, I'll say it again. It's enough of the heavyweights.
Yep.
It's enough. If that's the most interesting kind of result we can get out of this division, put it on standby. Have a heavyweight fight be the main event of every Contender Series show. Just don't put it in the UFC until it recovers itself, until it gets back on its feet and we have some actual good heavyweights to compete. I don't need to see this shit.
No. Well, at least Walter Cortez Acosta has made his case for a title shot.
Yeah. Can't wait. 2 heavyweight fights.
Yeah, apparently he came out and he was like, see, Aspinall, this is what a real man does. He fights with, you don't chicken out after one eye poke or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, I guess, but also you did go fetal, like hide, and they stopped the fight. Like, it wasn't like you just tanked your way through it and just kept going, did you? You had a giant little stop and rest.
Yeah. I did think there was, now, like, let's be fair, I have a strong bias against Waldo Cortez Acosta. I do not like him.
Who doesn't?
I think he seems like a shitty guy. Just, like I can't, there's nothing scientific about this. All I'm saying is that if Waldo Cortez Acosta, I had no idea who he was, and he approached me at the bar, say I'm at the bar doing karaoke, as I do every week, and I get stuck in a conversation with Waldo Cortez Acosta, I would try to remove myself as quickly and politely as possible. I just don't think I would like him. It's just vibes. And based on those same vibes, there was something strangely performative about the way that this fight concluded, because he knocked D'Elia out and was mashing on him. And then as soon as the fight was over, he like ran over to the fence and curled up in a ball again and started screaming and clutching a hand over his eye.
Yeah.
That was weird. Like, I don't want to call the guy out and say, like he did get poked, there's no question. And they don't always have to look horrible to fuck you up. There's something weird about the extremely outward performance of misery and pain that I'm not even saying that it wasn't born of actual discomfort and injury. I'm just saying it also felt calculated as like a, look what I just went through, like type of move, I don't know. Some guys stub their toes and they sort of wince and silently curse, and some guys stub their toes and they make a gigantic show of how hurt they are. Waldo Cortez Acosta strikes me as the latter.
Yep. No kidding.
So, I don't know if I have anything else to talk about. I am interested in the one I've mentioned several times from this undercard, Ricky Simón, Hani Barcelos, but I don't think we have time for it this week. We may get a chance to talk about it next week if something interesting happens. Having said that, we have an actual... Oh, no, we've got a week off.
Do we?
No, we don't. I'm wrong. I just can't do math. So yeah, next week we have an actual big stacked card happening. Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev. Certainly not the welterweight title fight I would have asked for, but a big and compelling fight nonetheless. Valentina Shevchenko versus Zhang Weili. I'm considerably more interested in that one as a move for the division, especially since the UFC has, I suppose in both cases, they have started stripping champions who want to move up in weight to fight a champion in the weight class above. We've also got Sean Brady versus Michael Morales. That's a very meaningful welterweight fight. Leon Edwards versus Carlos Praches. Likewise, Beneil Dariush versus Benoit Saint-Denis. Great action fight booking for the main card opener. Bo Nichols back. He's fighting Rodolfo Vieira. Fine. Roman Kopylov, Gregory Rodriguez. Aaron Blanchfield, Tracy Cortez. Kind of hard to find issues with this card, so I look forward to talking with you about that one next week, Phil. And
yeah, it's a pretty strong one, top to bottom. I did hear that apparently Bo Nickel got bumped from the main card.
Cool.
Which means
I'm guessing he was fine with that.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it may indicate that the UFC has realized that perhaps he's maybe not the best investment at this point.
Yeah, a wise move. Very very circumspect decision from the UFC, I would think.
Yeah.
All we can say is that I hope. I don't know. Let's make the pick right now. Of these fights, if one of them were fixed, which would it be? We've already said not going to be the main and co-main. It's too high profile. Nothing's happening there. Which of these fights is most likely to be fixed? I would say they don't need to fix a fight for Malcolm Wellmaker. He'll get a brutal KO if he wins.
No. Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, it's basically just like the opening fight, I think. Because these...
Eric McConaughey could use the cash, I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, I mean, because these things look, I would imagine, are directly driven simply by poverty. And even on one of the bigger cards of the year, I would expect the people on the very earliest prelims are not making very much at all.
That'd be a tough one to sell, because in the case of that matchup, Eric McConaughey versus Baisungur Susurkayev, I think it will look suspicious when only one person has bet on the fight at all. And that person's name is Mrs. McConaughey. I think that will raise some eyebrows. So good luck, Eric. I really hope you get away with it, honestly. I don't begrudge you for doing that, but we'll be back to talk about UFC 322 next week. And until then, I suppose if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.